Hello people of the internet, this is KaijuNoir here with a very special video. Ever since I talked about my top 15 favorite giant robots back in 2016, I've had requests from friends and fans alike for a follow-up covering my favorite giant monsters, which makes sense given how my channel mainly revolves around kaiju content. So, with the help from both my editor Brayton Connor and my guest artist Steve Tao, aka Raptor Gear, I'd like to present you with my top 15 favorite giant monsters in fiction. Now before we begin, I feel like I have to address this because I know people will be complaining in the comments. If you don't happen to see your favorite giant monster on the list, keep in mind that this is not meant to be a definitive list of the greatest monsters of all time. Rather, these are merely my own personal favorites based on my subjective opinions. Also, I'll be excluding Godzilla from this list, not because I hate him, but because it would be extremely predictable to have our beloved radioactive dinosaur at number 1. That, and I'd like to add a bit of dramatic tension as to who's going to be at the top of the list. So without further ado, let's get things started. Number 15. Giron. When comparing Godzilla's Rogues Gallery to Gamera's, it's clear to see that the Friend to All Children had some pretty out there concepts for monsters, and none was so bizarre than the bladed terror known as Giron. Long before Knifehead was spearing Jaegers into submission, Giron acted as the vicious guard dog for the alien sisters Barbella and Florbella, slicing and dicing any poor sap that crosses his path. Even when compared to the other monsters on this list, Giron proved in his single cinematic outing to be one of the most brutal and sadistic kaiju out there, mercilessly chopping the space cows until he was nothing more than sushi, and then later cutting deep into Gamera's previously unbreakable shell. What else can you expect out of a monster with a kitchen utensil for a face? If that wasn't crazy enough, he also has organic shurikens that can shoot out of his head, making him just as deadly from a distance as he is up close. To top things off, he's debatably one of the most ridiculous looking monsters in the entire Gamera franchise, but in all the right ways. I wanted to start this list off with a monster I enjoy purely based on its goofy design and effectiveness. And while monsters such as Gigan and Megalon were close contenders, I had to give the spot to the great evil beast himself.
Oh, that's his trademark laugh we're hearing there.
Number 14. Gargorgon. Coming from the 2015 series Ultraman X, Gargorgon appeared as the main antagonist of a two-part special. Despite only being seen briefly at the end of the first part, her presence as an intergalactic threat was made clear to the audience as an alien prince attempted to contact this show's Ultraman for help. By the second episode, our heroes barely escaped with their lives after Gargorgon easily overpowered Ultraman and Rudion and had to defeat her with her own petrifying attack. What I liked the most about Gargorgon was that the special effects team was able to take a pre-existing character from Greek mythology, a subject I'm a huge fan of, and give it a fresh new tokusatsu spin. Everything about this creature, from its veiny cycloptic eye to its slim and scaly physique, to the numerous spikes and claws that adorn its body, are all given a lavish amount of detail and are topped off by a dazzling display of colors. One last thing I like about its design comes from the fact that two of its heads are actually controlled by the suit actor's hands, while the monster's arms are manipulated by the webbing connecting them to the actor's real arms. I really appreciate this sort of innovation since it allows the special effects team to create a uniquely shaped creature that goes beyond a simple humanoid silhouette. While the recent Ultraman shows have been flooded with old school monsters, it's great to see that Tsuburaya can still pull off an original badass beast with his three-headed, two-tailed space monster. Hey, wait a minute!
Well, it's funny you should, George, they're onto us!
Number 13. The Invaders. Now here's a monster I'm sure most of my fans have never heard about, being that it's a character, or should I say species, that have only appeared in the 13-episode OVA, Getter Robo Armageddon. Serving as the series' main antagonist, this hive-minded extraterrestrial species seeks to take over the Earth and consume all its resources before moving on to the next planet. Each invader does so by devouring or absorbing any and all organic life. Due to the amorphous structure of their bodies, the invaders can assume any physical form in order to adapt to any situation, especially when it comes to combat, be it land, sea, or air. When enough invaders gather together, they can combine to create one of many horrific abominations, adorned with their trademark eyes and teeth. Now for those who don't know, my favorite horror film of all time is John Carpenter's The Thing, which features an alien organism that can assimilate other organisms and blend into its environment until provoked, at which point it will strike hard for the sake of its own survival. What we have here with the invaders is essentially a kaiju-sized thing, so of course I would quickly grow attached to these guys. The invaders can also combine with machinery to create stronger and even more nightmarish bodies for themselves, giving even the getter teams a run for their money. While some may argue that it's not fair to count an entire species with various forms as a single monster, I see them as a single entity due to their seemingly hive-minded approach to taking over the world, complete with the humanoid characters that act as their mouthpieces. However, at the end of the day, it's my list, so when it comes to animated monstrosities, I couldn't think of a better choice than the invaders. Number 12. Baragon. Baragon, the true underdog of the Toho monsters. Sure, many people have given that title to Anguirus due to him always losing every solo fight he's been in, but at least Toho was generous enough to even give him those appearances. Poor Baragon had only 2 major film appearances and an embarrassingly brief cameo in Destroy All Monsters due to the bad state the original suit was in after appearing as other monsters on television. It's really sad that Baragon hasn't had that many cinematic outings because I've grown to like this stout reptile. Sure, a quadrupedal reptilian monster isn't the most original design, but Eiji Tsuburaya and his team gave this monster so many unique quirks, which include his ability to burrow underground, his agility, the floppy ears that perk up when he's irritated, his glowing horn, the armored ridges on his back, and the large, almost puppy dog-like eyes. Speaking of puppy dogs, the 2001 incarnation made him even more adorable thanks to his portly appearance and his new roar that's both terrifying and cute. Even then, poor Baragon got the short stick once again due to not only being killed in the middle of the movie, but he was also left out of the goddamn title. Come on, Toho, give this guy a break. Overall, while Baragon isn't the strongest or even the most popular of monsters among the pantheon of Japanese kaiju, this guy's design appeals to me on every level. He's ferocious, speedy, and downright charming. Aw, who's your good little boy who likes to smash tunnels? Yes you are! Yes you are! Number 11. King Caesar. Otherwise known as King Shisa, this is yet another monster that was based on a mythological creature, this time the Shisa, a lion-dog-like animal that is believed to protect Okinawan households from evil spirits. In the case of King Shisa, Caesar, this guy stays true to his origins, but on a grand scale, defending both his island and the planet from Godzilla's mechanical doppelganger, Mechagodzilla. For years, Toho and Tsuburaya Productions had difficulties in bringing to life mammalian monsters, since unlike their scaly counterparts, fur can be a pain in the ass to be made believable. However, I have a feeling that Teruyoshi Nakano and his team may have taken inspiration from Sanda's design 8 years prior, as both him and Caesar feature a combination of fur and armored plating. By mainly applying the fur to his head and mane, it helps give Caesar a regal appearance that's capped off by both the crystal eyes and the jewel in the middle of his forehead. The major downside to this kaiju is that while his presence was hyped throughout the movie, his one-on-one fight with Mechagodzilla was a bit of a letdown, as the fight was far too one-sided for my liking. Still, he was able to pull off some impressive moves, like reflecting Mechagodzilla's laser right back at him, and being able to perform some semblance of martial arts. That, and he was willing to support Godzilla as he took every opportunity to aid the Big G. Now, what really impressed me about King Caesar was something that was only detailed in his official cutaway, in that he's not an organic being, but rather some artificial creation made of jewels, iron, and bricks. This adds so many questions as to his origins, and it's that level of mystery, on top of being a badass looking guard dog golem thing, that forever caught my attention and made me appreciate him in future appearances in comics, movies, and games. Number 10. Rodan. What favorites list wouldn't be complete without the flying terror, Rodan, a monster who has easily become one of Godzilla's most iconic foes for the last 50 years. Yet oddly hasn't had a pure Godzilla vs. Rodan movie yet. When you go back in time and see his original 1956 solo debut, it's easy to see why Rodan stood out, not just among Japanese monsters at the time, but among cinematic dinosaurs in general. Often, pterosaurs were limited to puppets either on strings or animated through stop-motion techniques. Here, Rodan was brought to life through a combination of puppetry and by a gorgeous suit with leathery wings, a spiked torso, black soulless eyes, and a grisly smile. The original design exudes so much personality that helps set him apart from other flying monsters. Then again, it's not that hard to top them when your competition is the giant claw and the pterosaur from Legend of the Dinosaurs. As if that wasn't enough, Rodan was a monster that didn't even need to physically cause destruction, as his top speed can knock over cars, trains, buildings, and even bridges. This level of power has been pretty consistent throughout his appearances and is always a sight to see. While few designs managed to capture the appeal of the original look, Rodan still came off as a cool kaiju in all of his flight scenes, as he added that extra level of franticness when fighting the likes of Godzilla or Ghidorah due to his speedy and unpredictable nature. While Godzilla may be considered the king of the monsters, I'll always consider Rodan as the king of the skies.
Oh, shit! It's a big bird!
Number 9. Pandon. After featuring a bevy of monsters and aliens in the 1967 series Ultra 7, the people at Tsuburaya Productions had to nail it out of the park for the series' two-part finale. They needed to create a foe that could not only leave a lasting impact for the show, but could give Ultra 7 the challenge of his life. Enter Pandon. Introduced as the ultimate weapon for an evil race of aliens, Pandon was sent to Earth to conquer the planet and eradicate its human population. At this time, Ultra 7's strength was weakening due to staying on Earth for far too long. Taking advantage of this handicap, Pandon clearly had the one-up on Ultra 7. That is until 7 barely escaped with his life by slicing off Pandon's arm and leg. A couple mechanical prosthetics later, and Pandon returned for one final duel to the death. Pandon as a monster really struck a chord with me due to its truly bizarre design, originally planned to be a two-headed monster before having one single head with two fire-spitting mouths with spiky texture. It also towered over 7 and had the strength to counter several of his classic moves. As time went by and future Ultraman shows started relying on classic monsters, Pandon was reintroduced multiple times. First as Neo Pandon in Ultra 7 Evolution, and later as King Pandon in the Super 8 Ultra Brothers movie, each featuring 2 separate heads. Finally, Pandon returned to his 60s roots in Ultraman Orb with Maga Pandon. Each design brought a unique flavor to the table, all equally menacing, though sadly none of them ever recreated the cyborg look of the original Pandon. As much as I like the surreal look of the single-necked versions, King Pandon remains my favorite design-wise, especially when each face was excellently sculpted. Its proportions were slim yet powerful, and its crimson spiky skin looked like the whole creature was a living ball of fire. It's simply too cool of a design for me to ignore, but in the end, whether he's got 1 or 2 necks, Pandon will always give the Ultramen the fight for their lives through his pyromaniacal means. Number 8. Eleking. Now to talk about my favorite kaiju from Ultra 7, the electric kaiju Eleking. Seemingly based on an electric eel, Eleking fills that personal niche for me when it comes to giant monsters, specifically those of the aquatic variety. Maybe it's because I spent so much of my life around water, be it living near the California coast or my 4 years as a lifeguard, but the idea of a monster that can fight not just on land, but in a large body of water always appealed to me. On top of that, it is also beautifully sleek and simple. Its serpentine body allows for a stylish color motif of pale yellow with black spots that resemble uneven lightning bolts. The design is further complemented by 2 antler-like horns that appear to generate electricity for the monster's attacks and a really long tail that can rival Shin Godzilla's in terms of its body-to-tail ratio. While not containing any claws or teeth, Eleking is adorned with a mechanical-looking mouth that shoots bolts of electricity as well as small waves of electrical energy, as well as having that tail that can not only be used like a whip, but can wrap around its opponents in order to trap its enemies and deliver a final surge of electricity to fry its opponents. By the time Ultra 7 finished, Eleking eventually gained enough popularity to reappear in Ultraman Taro, Redman, and the 90s Ultra 7 series. By the time Eleking appeared in 2005's Ultraman Max, Eleking would go on to appear in practically every Ultraman series in some shape or form, even becoming a good guy as one of the protagonist's 3 monsters in Ultra Galaxy. My personal favorites have always been EX Eleking, which completes the circle of him being based on an eel, and the amazingly badass Cyber Eleking, whose data was used to create Eleking-based armor for Ultraman X. I'm happy to say that since his appearance as a one-off monster, Eleking has become a staple of the Ultraman franchise, a character that Japan won't soon forget. Number 7. Destoroyah. Whether you refer to him as Destroyer, Destroya, or Destoroyah, there's not a doubt in my mind that this demonic entity was the perfect way to end the 90s series of Godzilla films, acting as the final boss to take on a dying Godzilla. Originally starting life as a colony of prehistoric crabs, these microscopic organisms were mutated by the oxygen destroyer that killed the original 1954 Godzilla. Over the next 40 years, these crabs would gain the ability to weaponize micro-oxygen and grow in size until they started combining with one another, becoming a nightmarish monster that's hell-bent on eradicating all life on the planet. This ever-evolving gimmick is very similar to Hedorah, as both share almost similar origins of microscopic creatures that combine to form a bigger, more destructive one. Destroyer's transformations added a level of unpredictability as well as numerous situations for it to terrorize humans, Godzilla, and even his son, Junior. However, its final form is easily the most entertaining to watch. Admittedly, its design is very much so in line with Koichi Kawakido's philosophy of putting the suit's design over functionality. However, Destroya is so goddamn cool that I could care less that the costume could barely move. Luckily, the filmmakers worked around this limitation and managed to pull out all the stops to provide an amazing slugfest between it and Godzilla. It was as if Destroya was the Grim Reaper, ready to bring Godzilla to the depths of hell, and was ready to use any cheap or dirty tactic to do the job. Thankfully, Destroya's full potential has since been brought to life in comics and video games, which further allowed Destroya's popularity to flourish and continue to scare the living hell out of future Godzilla fans.
Destroya!
Number 6. Silvergon. Now onto a kaiju that appeared in the very first Ultraman series I ever watched, Ultraman Tiga. Acting as an homage to Red King, a monster from the original Ultraman series, Silvergon was a monster of pure brute strength, easily killing a previous enemy that gave Tiga a hard time. Had it not been for its poor eyesight, possibly an homage to the T-Rex from Jurassic Park, Silvergon would have easily beaten poor Tiga into submission. However, what won me over was both his design and especially his personality. Silvergon in my eyes is a huge improvement over the walking corn on the cob. His body is covered in spikes and armor plating from head to toe. He just looks like a monster that can rip you in half and will enjoy every second of it. As for his personality, he feels like a spoiled bully who enjoys having things always go his way. But when he realizes that he can't do all the fancy tricks that Tiga can pull off, he not only is completely baffled, but he's also pissed right the hell off. He's both brutal and lovable in all the right ways. Unfortunately, his appearances have been limited in comparison to other Ultra Kaiju, making appearances in Ultraman Dyna as well as a few movies, such as the hunchback King Silvergon in the Super 8 Ultra Brothers. However, if his Spark Doll is anything to go by, he's still remembered to this day as one of the most memorable monsters from the 90s Ultraman shows. Number 5. King Kong. While I said that I wasn't going to add the most popular monster of all time, that didn't mean I wasn't going to leave out the other most iconic beast of the bunch. That's right, it's the one and only King Kong. A monster so influential to the world of entertainment, King Kong pretty much set the standard for all monsters to follow. No disrespect to the dinos of the Lost World, but King Kong was truly an imaginative being that could only exist in the movies. Not only that, but Kong, no matter what version you like, was perhaps the most sympathetic monster many of us have come across. When he's angry, you can feel his rage. When he's sad, you can feel his sorrow. When he's in pain, you can feel his anguish. That of course is helped by the fact that he's an ape, a creature we can instinctively relate to far more than any other animal. Due to his character being executed so well in so many incarnations, it's difficult for me to pick a favorite. I could choose the original 1933 incarnation for being my first exposure to giant monster cinema, the 1976 version for the ambitious man-in-suit effects, the Japanese Kong for its pure insanity, though I think my favorite to this day is Peter Jackson's version from 2005. This Kong, brought to life through Weta Digital and Andy Serkis's mocap, managed to capture everything I love about Kong: his unbreakable fighting spirit, his tender relationship with Ann Darrow, and his emotionally gripping fall from grace. Still, I will give a lot of credit to Skull Island's Kong, as he's already a battle-hardened monkey despite still being relatively young in his debut film. However, I feel like this Kong has plenty more to share with all of us in the future, as his name goes up in lights. After all, he's Kong, the 8th wonder of the world. Number 4. Gamera. Though not as prolific as Godzilla or Kong, the mighty Gamera has proven to be a unique creation numerous times throughout his varied career. Originally starting life as a mere Godzilla ripoff from Daiei Studios, the filmmakers quickly found a niche market by the time Gamera's third film came out, that being kids. Gamera managed to gain a decent amount of popularity through his crazy adventures involving innocent child sidekicks, absurd physics, outlandish monster designs, a surprising amount of bloodshed, and plenty of flying turtle action. The early Gamera series was also full of surprises, and it's no wonder that his appearances on the hit comedy show Mystery Science Theater 3000 helped propel Gamera to cult status in America. However, my introduction to Gamera wasn't this child-friendly version. Oh no! Back in the late 90s, I came across a film that taught me that there were more to monster movies than simply Godzilla and Kong. That was Gamera, Guardian of the Universe. It, along with its two sequels, pushed the limits as to what filmmakers could do with amazingly executed practical effects with just a dash of early CGI. Gamera was more badass than ever, his attacks more impactful, and his foes 10 times more terrifying. However, despite being a darker take on the character, Gamera remains to be one of the most selfless monsters I've come across, as he's willing to risk his own life time after time to protect the Earth and occasionally its people. This is what makes Gamera a truly special monster in my book. Unfortunately, ever since his failed second reboot in 2006, we haven't seen much of the friend to all children. Still, this crazy turtle will remain an unforgettable part of my childhood that had since carried into adulthood. His outrageous powers and never say die attitude is something that should definitely be seen by all. By then, you too will believe a turtle can fly. Number 3. King Ghidorah. Long before the likes of Destroya and Mechagodzilla, there was only one monster that could be considered Godzilla's ultimate enemy, one whose popularity has far eclipsed any other monster in Godzilla's rogues gallery, that being the space dragon King Ghidorah. Appearing in virtually every incarnation of Godzilla's career, King Ghidorah is a magnificent creation that deserves all the fame he's gotten over the years. Originally acting as the Galactus of the monster world, Ghidorah was traveling from planet to planet, decimating all life on each globe so as to expand its domain. Eventually, a small trio of monsters would stand up to the triple-headed threat in a battle that would remain to be my favorite within the Godzilla series. Since then, anytime Ghidorah would return to Earth, you knew that shit was gonna get real. By the 90s, he became a mirror version of Godzilla, a fellow mutation from the future that was forced into being Godzilla's foe and was eventually upgraded into the dazzling Mecha King Ghidorah. In 2001, Ghidorah saw a major change in personality as he was instead fused with Japanese mythology, as it protected the Earth against Godzilla alongside two other beasts. Finally, Ghidorah returned to his alien roots in 2004, and has remained to this day a fixture of the Godzilla franchise. When you get right down to it, Eiji Tsuburaya created a stunning and original creation whose presence is as wide as its wingspan. I mean, where else are you gonna find something as cool as a three-headed golden space dragon that shoots electricity? When it comes to Japanese cinema, there's only one who can fit that description.
Kill it! King Ghidorah!
Number 2. Zeton. Much like how I placed Ultra 7's final foe on my list, I'm doing the exact same for the original Ultraman. Now at first glance, you're probably thinking to yourself, what's so special about this bug-like alien? However, little do you know, this silent titan is hiding a power so strong that not even Ultraman could overcome it. His unassuming nature is what intrigues me the most about him. Unlike other final bosses in Ultraman shows and movies like Eukilosaurus, Katanazoa, or Maga Orochi, Zeton doesn't have an abundance of frills, spikes, teeth, and claws. His subdued nature and the simple approach to his design helps make this kaiju stand out even 50 years later. Speaking of his design, he's very strange and unsettling even among other big bugs. For starters, he's very humanoid with very stocky proportions and a lack of a traditional face. I mean, you'd think that the yellow glowing stripe in his head is some kind of cycloptic eye or mouth, but no, the yellow spots on his chest are his eyes, while the yellow organ on its head is for spewing out fireballs. Speaking of his power set, it can counter any attack Ultraman can throw at him, with energy barriers, teleportation, and the ability to absorb attacks and send them right back at his opponent. Simply put, Zeton is a nearly unstoppable juggernaut, and would have been so had it not been for an egregious use of Deus Ex Machina. Since his first appearance, Zeton would have many more appearances in the Ultraman franchise, with each incarnation further emphasizing the severity of his immense presence. And with new incarnations, that also means new redesigns, such as EX Zeton, Hyper Zeton, Cyber Zeton, and even a couple fusions with classic Ultraman kaijus, such as the previously mentioned Pandon, as well as King Joe and Bemstar. Perhaps my favorite redesign is the Kaiju Remix version, which sadly only exists as a single statuette, which I believe captures the simplistic nature of Zeton while adding a grim and disturbing aura to his now slender appearance. Overall, Zeton is the perfect package for a monster that's memorable, powerful, unpredictable, and bizarrely captivating enough for it to be my favorite end boss in the giant monster genre, at least when it comes to Ultraman. Number 1. Titanosaurus. By the early 70s, the Godzilla series was in serious decline, both in terms of the film's box office reception and the quality of said films. Luckily, thanks to the popularity of Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, Toho gave the franchise one last chance with 1975's Terror of Mechagodzilla. For this film, we saw the return of Mechagodzilla and his extraterrestrial creators once again attempting to take over the Earth and putting an end to Godzilla's life. However, this time, Mechagodzilla had an organic counterpart in the form of Titanosaurus, my favorite monster of all time, not counting Godzilla. Being another giant dinosaur, I can't help but feel that Titanosaurus was written to be Godzilla's mirror opposite, as not only are they both ancient reptiles from a bygone era, but each beast takes a very different path when it came to their interactions with humans. One was forever mutated by humanity and proceeded to live life the way he chose to, while the other was left unharmed, but was forced to fight for malicious reasons. In a way, Godzilla acts as a constant reminder of mankind's arrogance, while Titanosaurus was made to put an end to mankind for said arrogance. It's life versus death, free will versus total submission. Along with the themes Ishiro Honda and Yukiko Takayama brought to the table, Titanosaurus' tragic story is also brilliantly tied to the cyborg antihero Katsura, as both are forced to do the evil bidding of the mad scientist Dr. Mafune and the alien invaders. It's this connection to a particular human's life that made Titanosaurus more than just another dinosaur, and that's most likely what Mike Reich thought when he wrote issue 3 of Godzilla Legends, where Titanosaurus once again formed a bond, this time a psychic link, with a young boy with emerging telepathic powers, only for both to be taken advantage of by a familiar group of aliens. Design-wise, Titanosaurus is a marvel to behold. As previously stated, I love aquatic monsters, and the team behind his design and suit made it clear that this was a creature that thrived in the ocean, with beautiful fins, a vibrant color palette, a crocodile-like snout, and a combination of bumpy and armored skin. Aside from that, Titanosaurus has a maniacal roar that is sure to stick in your brain. It's like someone took the high-pitched cackle of an 80s villain like Skeletor and translated it into a roar. Finally, Titanosaurus follows a simplistic approach when it comes to battling Godzilla, as it's mostly a melee fighter that prefers to use its impressive strength to toss Godzilla around like a ragdoll. But when given the opportunity, he can whip out his tail to generate incredible gusts of wind, equal to that of Rodan's. Had it not been for that pesky weakness to supersonic waves, Titanosaurus and Mechagodzilla would have been the most unstoppable force in the world. While Terror of Mechagodzilla wasn't intended to be the final film in the classic era of the Godzilla series, Titanosaurus, along with his partner Mechagodzilla, provided the most spectacular way to send off the character for the next 10 years. And even without the knowledge that this was indeed the final Showa film, Titanosaurus still left a great impact on me as a kid, and still does now, from both a thematic as well as a spectacle field standpoint, which is why he will remain my favorite giant monster after the Big G. Thank you very much everybody for watching, and a special thanks to my editor Brayton, as well as my artist Raptigear for the fantastic art that you've been seeing throughout this countdown. Hope you all enjoyed this look at my most beloved beasts in fiction, and thanks once again for helping this channel grow to new heights. Until next time everybody, take care.